There is a specific kind of silence that lives inside a woman who has loved deeply and been left holding the pieces. It is not emptiness. It is not numbness. It is something far more complicated than either of those words can hold. It is the silence of a woman who has learned to keep her longing quiet, who has learned to smile in the right places, who has become so practiced at carrying invisible weight that even she sometimes forgets how heavy it has grown. If you recognize that silence, this is for you. Not because someone guided you here through fate or cosmic alignment, but because something far more powerful than fate brought you to this moment. Your own exhausted, beautiful, still hoping heart did. And it deserves the truth. Not comfort disguised as truth. The actual thing. Carl Jung spent his life studying the hidden architecture of the human psyche. He believed that what we do not bring into conscious awareness does not disappear. It lives beneath the surface. It shapes our choices before we realize a choice is being made. It draws certain people toward us, like a current we cannot see, but absolutely feel. And it keeps us returning to the same emotional rooms, over and over, wondering why the walls look different, but the ache feels identical. You may have told yourself that your patterns in love are just bad luck, that you attract the wrong people, that you love too deeply or trust too quickly or want too much. But Jung would say something different. He would say that until you understand what lives in the shadow of your own heart, you will keep falling not in love, but in recognition, mistaking familiarity for connection, mistaking intensity for depth, mistaking someone who mirrors your wound for someone who can heal it. This is not a message about a person coming towards you. This is a message about the person you have not yet allowed yourself to fully see. Yourself. And that journey, the one that begins inside before it ever unfolds outside, that is where real love actually starts. Stay with me. Because what comes next might be the most important thing you hear this year. There is a concept in Jungian psychology called the animus. It is the masculine energy that lives within every woman's unconscious mind. Not a man, not a fantasy, an internal force, a set of qualities, strengths, and characteristics that her deeper self is trying to integrate, trying to claim as her own. And here is what most women are never told. The men we fall for, especially the ones who pull us in without logic, who consume our thoughts at 3 a.m, who leave us confused and wanting and half awake in our own lives, those men are often not who we love. They are projections, screens onto which we cast the parts of ourselves we have not yet found the courage to own. Think about the last time you fell hard for someone and could not explain why. Think about the pull, the almost irrational certainty that this person mattered, that they were different, that something real was happening even when the evidence suggested otherwise. That pull was real, but it may not have been entirely about him. It may have been about the part of you he represented, the freedom you were afraid to claim, the confidence you secretly envied, the emotional unavailability that mirrored the part of your own heart you had walled off long ago. This is not blame. This is not a diagnosis. This is an invitation to look somewhere you have never been fully invited to look, your own interior, with honesty, with compassion. Without the story you have rehearsed so many times, it now feels like fact. Because the truth is that you're not waiting to be found. You're waiting to find yourself. And the moment you do, everything about the love you attract will begin to change in ways that feel almost impossible to anticipate. Let me tell you about a woman. She's not anyone specific. She is every woman who has ever sat in her car after a hard conversation, staring at nothing, asking herself what is wrong with her. She fell in love young, or she fell in love at exactly the wrong time, which sometimes feels like the same thing. She gave herself fully, the way women with deep hearts tend to do, and the person she gave herself to was not ready, or not capable, or not safe, or simply not the right person, no matter how much she reshaped herself, trying to become someone he could love without conditions. She learned through that experience something that felt like wisdom, but was actually armor. She learned to hold back, to give just enough, but never everything, to be warm, but never completely open, to want connection while simultaneously testing every person who came close enough to provide it. She told herself she was being careful. She told herself she had learned from the past. But what she had actually done was build a wall so expertly disguised as self-respect that even she could not see it for what it was. And so she kept meeting the same kind of man. Not because the universe was punishing her, not because she was cursed, but because the pattern lived inside her, not outside, because she was unconsciously seeking the familiar ache, because a part of her had decided in that long ago moment of first heartbreak that love always costs too much and arrives already broken. Jung called this the repetition compulsion made conscious, the idea that we will keep recreating the conditions of our original wound until we finally stop running from it long enough to understand what it is actually asking us to heal. Does any part of this sound familiar? Not the specific details, the feeling underneath, the sense that you have been here before. The exhaustion that comes not from loving too much, but from loving in the same direction over and over, hoping a different road will appear at the end. Here is what nobody tells women about emotional patterns in love. The men who hurt us the most are not always the cruelest. Sometimes they are simply the most unconsciously familiar, the ones who recreate the emotional temperature of something we experienced long before we were old enough to name it. A woman raised by an emotionally distant father does not consciously seek emotionally distant partners, but her nervous system knows that emotional distance is what love feels like in the place where love first took shape in her. So she reads unavailability as depth. She reads inconsistency as passion. She reads someone who blows hot and cold as someone worth pursuing, because the pursuit itself feels like love, like proof she is trying, like evidence she is not giving up. And she mistakes the anxiety of inconsistency for the electricity of attraction. This is one of the most important things you will ever understand about yourself. The butterflies you feel around certain people are not always excitement. Sometimes they are your nervous system recognizing a familiar kind of tension. Sometimes that stomach drop is not chemistry. It is your body bracing itself for something it has already survived once. Real love, the kind that actually lasts, the kind that does not consume you but nourishes you, often feels quieter than you expect. It does not announce itself with chaos. It does not make you doubt yourself. It does not leave you analyzing his words at midnight or rehearsing conversations that never happen. Real love feels steady. And for women who grew up equating love with effort, with uncertainty, with having to earn affection, steady can feel almost unsettling at first. It can feel too simple, too available, too calm. And in that confusion, so many women walk past the very thing they have been asking for because it does not hurt enough to feel real. This is the shadow at work. This is the unconscious telling a story that your conscious mind never agreed to, but has been living inside of for years. Let us talk about what Jung called the shadow self, because this is the piece that changes everything, and it is the piece that is almost never discussed in the spaces where women talk about love. The shadow is not your darkness. It is not the worst version of you. It is everything you were taught to push down, to hide, to be ashamed of, to smooth over with politeness and agreeableness, and the endless performance of having it together. The shadow is your anger that never got to be angry, your needs that learned to stay silent, your desire that was told it was too much, your grief that got buried under strength because strength was what was required of you, your wildness, your selfishness, your truth, the raw, unpolished version before it got edited down for everyone else's comfort. And here is what the shadow does in relationships. It does not disappear when you fall in love. It goes looking for expression. It finds people who will act it out for you so you do not have to. The woman who has never let herself be angry ends up with the man who is always furious. The woman who has swallowed her needs for decades ends up with the man who makes everything about himself. The woman who was told her desires were too much ends up with the man who can never give enough because his inadequacy confirms what she already secretly believed, that she really was too much, that wanting things was the problem, that she should have needed less. This is not about blame. Say that again to yourself slowly. This is not about blame. It is about recognition. Because you cannot change a pattern you cannot see, and you cannot see a pattern that lives in the part of yourself you have never been invited to honestly examine. But you are being invited now. The woman you are becoming, the one who has been forming quietly beneath the surface of every hard year, every confusing relationship, every morning you rebuilt yourself without applause. She is not broken. She is not too late. She is not too much, or too little, or too complicated to love. She is, in Jungian terms, individuating, which simply means she is in the process of becoming fully herself, integrating the parts she abandoned, reclaiming the aspects of her identity she gave away in exchange for belonging, learning to hold her wholeness without needing someone else to confirm it. And this process changes everything about who you attract. Because here is the truth about love that nobody frames this way. We do not attract who we want. We attract who we are, not in the surface sense of appearance or personality, in the deeper sense of what we believe we deserve, what we have decided, consciously or not, that love looks like. What level of regard feels normal to receive? What kind of treatment we have learned to accept as the baseline of a relationship? When those inner beliefs shift, everything outside shifts with them. Not through magic, not through manifesting a specific person with a specific age and a specific set of romantic qualities, but through the far more powerful process of becoming someone whose inner world is no longer organized around the expectation of being disappointed. Think about the women in your life who seem to have found something real, who are loved in ways that are quiet and consistent and deep, who do not perform happiness but actually inhabit it. Look closely. They are not luckier than you. They are not more beautiful or more worthy or somehow chosen by a universe that overlooked you. They found their way to themselves first, and from that place they recognized love when it arrived, because they were no longer confusing it with something else. There is a moment in every woman's emotional life that changes the entire trajectory of how she loves. It is not a breakup. It is not a new relationship. It is a single, quiet moment of clarity, usually arrived at alone, usually at some unremarkable hour of an ordinary day. It is the moment she stops asking what is wrong with the people who have not loved her well, and begins asking what the pattern in those people reveals about the story she's been telling herself. That question is terrifying. I will not pretend otherwise, because the answer requires her to look at herself not with blame, but with honesty. And honesty, real honesty, about our own wounds and defenses and the ways we participate in the dynamics we later describe as things that happen to us. That kind of honesty requires courage that most people never quite locate. But here is what waits on the other side of that courage. Freedom. Real, bone-deep, unmistakable freedom. Not the kind that comes from being alone or from swearing off love. The kind that comes from finally understanding yourself clearly enough that you stop being a mystery to your own heart. The kind that comes from being able to feel the old pull toward chaos and recognize it for what it is, without being swept away by it. The kind that lets you sit with a genuinely good person, someone stable and honest and capable of the kind of love you have been quietly aching for, and let yourself receive it, without sabotaging it, without testing it to its limit, without waiting for the other shoe to drop so insistently that you drop it yourself just to end the suspense. That freedom is not found in someone new arriving. It is found in the oldest and most consistent relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. Now, let us talk about what you actually came here for, because beneath the search for understanding, beneath the need to make sense of your patterns, there is something simpler and more human. You want to love and be loved. Fully. Honestly. Without the weight of old wounds turning every new connection into a battlefield. You want to stop being afraid. You want to stop choosing between your heart and your sanity. You want to find someone and feel safe enough to stay found. That is not a weakness. It is the most fundamental human desire that exists. And here is what Jung understood about desire. It does not lead us astray as often as we think. What leads us astray is desire filtered through unexamined fear. Desire shaped by the belief that we do not fully deserve what we want. Desire that gets aimed at people who feel familiar rather than people who are actually good for us. When you do the interior work, when you meet your shadow with honesty rather than shame, when you learn to recognize the difference between the electric pull of a wound being touched and the steady warmth of genuine emotional safety, desire becomes something trustworthy again. You stop falling into people, you begin choosing them. And that shift from falling to choosing, from reacting to deciding, from needing to wanting, that shift is where real love becomes possible. Not because the right person suddenly appears, but because you become the person who can finally receive them. There will be someone. Perhaps there already is. Perhaps they are at the edges of your awareness, someone you have not fully looked at yet because your attention has been elsewhere. Perhaps they are ahead of you, approaching at a pace that cannot be rushed. But unlike the version of this story you may have heard before, the one where love simply arrives like weather, this version asks something of you. It asks you to do the work that makes love sustainable, not perfect, not without conflict or confusion or the occasional 3 a.m. spiral, but sustainable, real, built on something that does not crumble the first time life applies pressure. It asks you to look at the parts of yourself you have kept in the dark, not to punish them, to understand them, to offer them something your past relationships never quite managed to give you, not rescue, not completion, compassion. Because when you can look at the most defended, most frightened, most wounded parts of yourself with genuine tenderness, you stop needing someone else to be the source of your own worth. And from that place, you stop attracting people who confirm your worthlessness. You stop accepting treatment that fits the story of not being enough. You begin, slowly, and then all at once, to recognize love that matches what you have finally started to believe about yourself. Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not the polished version, not the version that has its emotions managed and its past neatly explained and its wounds all healed into beautiful scars. The complete version. Every contradiction, every unresolved question, every part you still do not entirely understand about why you do what you do. That complete woman, the one who has stopped waiting to be finished before she allows herself to be loved, she is the one who receives love that lasts. Not because she is perfect, because she is honest, not because she has healed everything, because she has stopped pretending she has not been hurt, not because she has figured it all out, because she has found the courage to stop performing certainty for the benefit of people who were never safe enough to deserve her real self anyway. You are that woman, or you are on your way to becoming her. And the distance between where you stand right now and where you want to be in love is not as long as fear has convinced you. It is one honest conversation with yourself, followed by another, and another. It is one moment of choosing truth over comfort, one moment of sitting with an uncomfortable feeling instead of filling the silence with someone who will distract you from it. One moment of letting yourself want what you actually want without apologizing for it, without shrinking it, without making it smaller so someone else can feel bigger. You came here today because something in you was ready. Not ready for someone to arrive and make it all make sense, ready to make sense of yourself. And that readiness is the beginning of everything. The love that is real, the kind that stays, the kind that deepens instead of decaying, is not built on the frantic relief of finally being chosen. It is built on two people who have done enough interior work to genuinely see each other, Not the performance, not the projection, each other. When you are ready to see clearly, you attract someone who is also willing to be seen. When you stop hiding your real self, you stop being magnetic to people who need you to stay hidden. When you release the story that love must feel like uncertainty and effort and the breathless anxiety of never quite knowing where you stand, something unusual happens. Calm starts to feel like love. Consistency starts to feel like passion. Honesty starts to feel like intimacy. And you realize, perhaps for the first time, that what you were searching for was never out there in the first place. It was in the willingness to finally come home to yourself, to stop abandoning the one person who has been with you through everything, to look inward with the same devotion you have poured outward for years. That is the love Jung was pointing toward. Not romantic love as the answer, but the self-knowing that makes romantic love something real and lasting rather than something we chase, because we do not yet know how to stand in our own presence without flinching. You are not waiting for someone to love you into wholeness. You are already whole. You always were. And the moment you believe that, not as a mantra, not as something you repeat in the mirror, but quietly doubt, but as something you have earned through honest self-examination and the hard, beautiful work of knowing yourself, that is the moment everything changes. Not because someone new is coming, because you finally arrived,